Welcome to the AHA Show,
where we hope to provide abundantly helpful advice through real stories of inspiration and achievement.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Berman, and this is my gorgeous co-host, Miss Alex, too. And we are at the AHA Show, where we provide abundantly helpful advice through real stories of inspiration and achievement. And I'm so honored and thrilled today to introduce you all to not only one of my very closest and best friends, but he's also my entertainment manager, the infamous Mr. Tim Kessler.
Well, hello, thank you.
Hi, Tim. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
So today, I did not tell Alex for the first time on our interviews exactly what Tim's story is.
I am dying right now. I have asked you, Jen, so many times, please, please, please tell me. She refuses to tell me. So I am so looking forward to hearing your story.
No, and it's just the coolest thing, Tim, because, you know, you cannot get to Mr. Kessler, you know, unless you're on a TV show or unless you're already there. He does not have the time. And I've always been warned, you know, you won't get to him. And I had been signed for my own show back, God, 2007 or something, way back when. And at the time, one of my best friends was a casting director, Mary Rachel, that got me to
that's
you.
right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they had worked together on so many series and so many shows. And then I had gone to work, you know, for Hilton and Highland, and then I couldn't, you know, do the show because I was running the company. And as the time has come on, now I'm doing a show on CNBC.
Sure.
And through those years, you have become, I'm just honored and blessed to call you one of my very best friends.
I feel the same way,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And after this, you and I as well.
We are going to be really close.
Yes, that's right.
And so, Tim, I mean,
Yes.
the audience probably doesn't really know, like, what happens behind the scenes, and what does it mean to be a manager or an agent, and what does that look like?
Well, representation, as I always tell people, it's definitely a personal relationship. So it's very much like, because of what I do, I need to make sure that you and I are aligned in terms of like your goals and your aspirations, and making sure that I'm trying to fulfill those for you. So, you know, there is a difference between an agent and a manager. Not a huge difference when it comes to the kind of work I do in unscripted television. And unscripted television is anything that's hosted, or basically anything that's a docu-follow as well. So what I do is I try to find the most interesting, most credible people in whatever space they're most passionate about, build that brand, and then sell it around a television concept or a digital concept.
And it's, I mean, it's gotta be hard working with the personalities, shall we say, in Hollywood.
You know, it's interesting that you say that. I always enjoy getting to know the personalities. And I think a lot of people who would get maybe a little bit more like annoyed with certain people, I just find it entertaining, to be honest with you. I get it. And it's interesting because with each client, you know that there are little things that make a big difference in when you're talking to a producer about a deal. So sometimes it's about the class of travel, something as easy as that. Sometimes it's about making sure the hair and makeup is always provided. Sometimes it's about car service. Sometimes it's getting paid up front prior to doing something. So everyone has, you know, once you figure out what their triggers are, you can go in and really do a good job at making sure you're negotiating on their behalf.
So how did you get into this business? Why? I mean, how was it? Did you wake up one day and say, this is what I want to do?
No, absolutely not. I grew up in Georgia. After college, I moved to Savannah, Georgia. And while I was in Savannah, Georgia, I ran into, just coincidentally, strangely enough, Robert Downey Jr. So Robert Downey and I became friends over the 3 months that he was working on a Robert Altman film called Gingerbread Man. So I was working at the hotel in which Robert was staying at. So at this point, I think I was assistant, like the assistant housekeeping manager, I think. And anyway, I was in a management committee meeting, and the front desk guy came in and he's like, I got a problem. Robert Downey is out at the desk and we don't have his room. Like, he was supposed to be here a few days ago, and, you know, he's just now arriving and we're booked. And I was like, I'll take care of this. And it wasn't that I wanted to necessarily talk to a celebrity, that I just didn't want to sit through this management committee meeting any longer. I would rather stick forks in my eyes than listen to the same problems, the same every week, and nothing ever gets solved. It was just like, I'll take care of it. So I walk out, end up getting him another hotel down the street, that had some availability. A few days later, went back down there and said, are you comfortable here? You can stay here, or I can take you back to the original one. He goes, no, I'll go back to the other one. So did that. And so we just kind of exchanged phone numbers, and he called me. And he said, hey, listen, I really want to get out of the hotel altogether. I'm here for 3 months, and I would just be more comfortable in a house. And I'm like, well, all right. I don't know why this is my issue right now, but okay. So the Olympics, this is back in '97, by the way.
Okay.
Wow.
So a while ago. So the Olympics had just gone through Atlanta, and the yachting events were in Savannah. And so I happened to have met some yachting people that had a house on Tybee Island, which is about 15, 20-minute drive from where he was staying. I drove by there, saw that it was for lease. I talked to the real estate person. They're like, this is what it's for lease for, and I was like, it's short term. So then I got Robert and his people together, and they closed that deal. And then to thank me, Robert invited me out for dinner. So it was Robert, and then Robert Sr., Robert's dad was there, and Daryl Hannah, and like Kenneth Branagh. And so we're just like hanging out, having dinner. And
How surreal is that?
I know, right?
Yeah.
And you're a kid.
Yeah, you're at a hotel. We're at a hotel. Now you're having dinner.
Yeah, it was very strange. So they, that happens, and just after the months. Oh, at one point, after the months of him being there, it was finally like, would you like to work? Be an assistant. And of course, I was like, well, what does that pay? You know what I mean? It doesn't sound like that pays much. And I've just gone from a front desk clerk to assistant reservations manager to assistant, housekeeping manager. When they told me the price, I was like, oh yeah, that's like 4 times what I make right here. So, well, when do we leave?
Decision.
And it was literally like the next day. We were on a plane.
Yeah, but wait, tell you went and got your stuff packed up. That was the best part.
Oh yeah, because I didn't have enough bags. And whenever I was like, yeah, and they're like, okay, well the Island Jet, because Island was the production company producing the film, like the Island Jet goes to New York literally tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I was like, I don't have enough. So I called them up, and like Robert and his people, and they're like, don't worry. And they sent over some PAs with some big bags and just shoved everything in there.
Packed them.
Oh
Yeah, I remember it was so important that my VCR went. I don't know why.
Oh my God.
I was like, yeah, let's pack that.
Kids, a VCR
Yeah, exactly.
is
They don't
a
even
device with a big tape, and that's how we used to watch movies. We used to go to a store and have to check it.
Yes. True. So yes, and then I worked with him for about 3 years. Just for 3 years.
And then didn't you stay at his house in New York, or how did that happen? I can't remember.
Stay at his house. Well, we needed to find him homes all the time.
Right.
And it was interesting because you're a good friend of mine, and in real estate. And I have a lot of real estate friends because if I wasn't, which sounds horrible, but if I wasn't, toward the end of this whole thing, if I wasn't visiting, Robert in jail or prison, I was out looking for homes for him. We should probably edit that out. But yeah.
This was back in the day, child.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. It's all good now.
Yeah.
Now he's fantastic. Not that he wasn't back then, but everything, life happens and everything's good. So.
Yeah.
And that's the story of getting in. And now
Yes.
just like but you go through those. What was your aha moment in that though? Because that's really what the show is about. And it's like, at what point in a pivotal time, even working with him, and then later on in your career, because you've had to have several of those. There's no one that I work with in Hollywood where I can say, oh, do you know Tim Kessler? He's like, oh, I've stayed with her. I mean, every celebrity. So nothing it alters your mind on anything.
Right.
But you've had to have some aha moments at times.
Absolutely. Well, there were times when, things weren't necessarily there wasn't a lot to do at certain points when I was working with Robert toward the end. And so, but it was also just because you're incarcerated doesn't mean I'm going to quit. But I knew as soon as he was out, I needed to, the aha moment was I needed to have also, and it was great. It was a fantastic work experience. It was fantastic. He's the sweetest, nicest guy ever. It wasn't about that. It was just how I need my career to be furthered. And so my thing was okay, well, what I'm gonna do is get a job as an assistant at an agency. So I did that. I worked there for a short amount of time, and they franchised me as an agent pretty quickly, like 3 or 4 months into me being there. I actually thought I was being fired, to be honest with you. And it sounds great, but the honest truth is, like, they needed to create another agent position, and I had been there and I guess doing an okay job, and they're like, be an agent. And so what I did, because of my previous job, is I was working with the president of this company doing celebrity endorsements. So I learned how to be an agent in the endorsement world. And
Was endorsements big back then?
it was. It really was. And David was my boss, and David he taught me literally how to negotiate a contract. I mean, it was so interesting. Whenever I was first kind of getting started in it, and people would be like, oh yeah, we have this brand and we have this celebrity, and all of a sudden I would hear David on the phone like quoting like these numbers, and I'm like, that's astronomical. I was like, okay, that's amazing, you know? So, you know, I learned, you know, that there is a benefit to knowing what these deals look like, and, you know, and like I said, he was great. He taught me, you know, all the, you know, just the ins and outs of how to negotiate these kind of contracts, because there's so many different things that you have to take advantage of, or take a look at, I guess, and make sure that you're doing what's right to protect the client, to protect the brand. It's very interesting. So I did that for several years, probably 3 years with him. And then another like aha moment was, I was like, you know, David kind of has this all dialed in, like he's really good at it. I feel like I'm an agent, but I kind of feel like I'm a glorified assistant to a large degree, because he can do all this, you know what I mean? And I feel like I was probably useful. I mean, why would you keep me on payroll if I wasn't? But at the same time, I wasn't fulfilling anything for myself. You
weren't fulfilled.
Right, exactly. And I was like, I need to do something different here. So what I did is I created the business plan to start the alternative television department at this agency. And David was always very supportive. The other partners were a little bit like, no, everything's fine. Like, let's just keep it kind of like as it's going. And my thought to them was, well, yeah, but like, I know how to do endorsement deals now, and we don't have a television, this agency doesn't have a television department, and so why don't I create celebrity through alternative television, which is unscripted television, and then once they become celebrity, then I can do endorsement deals on top of them, so it's 2 revenue streams coming in.
Okay, what year was this again?
This is 2004.
Wow.
And
this was before.
And I was like, so why don't, you know, that would make the most sense. And they agreed, and you know, they were like, yeah, but you don't know anybody in that. And I was like, well, yeah, but everyone has to start somewhere. Yeah. And I literally just started, you know, just going online and looking like who are the players in this game, and just calling people up and asking for lunch appointments.
That's so interesting. You were doing this before reality TV was a big deal.
You know what was funny though? Do you know how when my first meeting with Tim, this is just the most random story on the planet. So I finally get this meeting with the famous Tim Kessler. So I go in, and of course Tim's on the phone. I'm like a peon, I'm nobody. I'm like sitting down, like so excited waiting for this meeting. I look over and there's a bobblehead that's sitting on the desk. It's one of my best friends, Joey Greco.
Oh, yeah.
That was the first host of Cheaters. Yeah. And I'm like, why do you have this on your desk? He's like, that's my client. I'm like, wait, what? What a random thing was that?
Well, and at that time.
Because he was way back when.
Oh, yeah. I used to watch the show Cheaters. It was.
I was friends with him before he got on the show Cheaters, yeah.
Yes, I remember watching that show and just being fascinated about, you know, people getting caught cheating, basically.
Well, you know, it's really interesting because even to this day, I represent really the creator of that show.
Really?
He and I have another television show that we do, but he helped create Cheaters along with the other people, but it was really a large portion due to him, and I didn't know that then. But now he and I work together, and we have a television show that we work on together called Texas Metal, which is a car makeover show. We're in 3rd season right now. But interestingly, and at that time, it's so weird how Cheaters is like, and I don't even think about it actually, but I still have the bobblehead. I don't represent him any longer, but I do have the bobblehead. But at the time, it was weird because it wasn't like, so I also represented the guy who, it was called Secretos, and it was the Spanish version of Cheaters. Isn't that weird?
Did not even know this
That
at
must
all.
be the most dramatic show.
Yeah, it was like, and so I represented, I think his name was Ricardo, I don't represent him any longer, but.
Of course it is.
Yeah, but it was like Secretos, but it was literally Spanish version of Cheaters, and so I had Joey, I had Ricardo, and then I had John.
I'm gonna watch this, you have no idea.
I'm sure there's still episodes out there, I'm sure, because this has been years, this is a long time ago.
And you represented people on that too?
On what?
On the Secretos?
I represented the host. It was Joey's role. It was the host of the show.
That's so interesting. You were doing this a decade ago, which is before unscripted TV became really big.
Right.
What was that? I'm curious. What was that? How did you know that? I feel like people who make that decision and start a whole entire department to do it. What was it that? What was your instincts to do that?
The honest truth is, what I left out. After leaving working with Robert, I became an assistant at a theatrical management company. And I got the job mainly because I was on set of Wonder Boys, which is a film that Robert did. So I was in Pennsylvania for several months with Robert doing Wonder Boys, and I met a manager there, Toby's manager, Toby McGuire, and we became friends. And he was like, well, if you ever need a job, blah, 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 let me know. You seem to know what you're doing. Let me tell you something. Being Robert's assistant and being an assistant at a theatrical management company with giant names like they had, I probably still do, it was such a difficult job. I mean, I had this job for a year, and it was the most difficult thing. You're there at 7 a.m. working until like 9, 10 on the weekends. You're covering scripts and books, and I mean, it just was, it was just not the right home for me. And the theatrical game is very, very, it's just, I don't know, you have to have a different kind of like.
24/7.
It really is, it really is. And so, I did not do a phenomenal job on that, you know what I mean? And so when I left there and I got the job at the other agency, and it was endorsement work, I was like, this makes more sense, you know what I mean? It's just more my speed. And that agency where I was at, because of my previous experience at the management company, I was like, I don't want to do anything in the theatrical world. Like, that is not my game. Like, if I have to do that, I'll probably just move back to Georgia. Like, it does not make sense. Yeah, it's just.
We're glad you did not move back to Georgia.
I was like, this just does not make any sense. And so when I saw what was going on television, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Like, because there wasn't a ton of these types of shows, the hosted type shows. I mean, it was really, they were hosts. They were like the Ryan Seacrest. They were those people who were kind of like domineering that, not that he still isn't, but very much like that. But it wasn't nearly the amount of content that there is now.
No.
And so when I started it, there's something that we use called breakdown services. So breakdown services will send representation agents, basically the job listings. So it'll be like, we're looking for this. So we're looking for a chef for a formatted cooking show, basically. Okay, that's great. So you would just basically submit your chefs, and then they would come back to you with who they wanted to see. Then you have a bunch of auditions. So back then, like from 2004 to 2008, it was just basically like just getting people into rooms. They would audition, and then hopefully you get the contract, you close it, and they move on, because almost all of it was still formatted television. Right. And then 2008 hits, and all of a sudden, and this is another aha moment, is that DocuFollow has kind of swept. And DocuFollow is going to be more of like your Real Housewives, you know what I mean? Like those types of shows.
That was the year, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, where that was really, so all of a sudden you're looking at this and you're like, I'm not getting nearly as many auditions, and if you look at what's going on out there, they're looking for someone to have a fantastic personality and build a show around them. Right. You don't necessarily, so you have a choice. You could either go out and try to represent every housewife in America,
right,
or you could figure out, okay, I'm gonna meet some really interesting people who do really interesting things, and then develop a concept around that. So now your job has moved to just meeting good, cool people who are good at what they do, and then answering basically a solicitation for work, to now meeting these people and creating the opportunity around them.
Wow.
And if your department or your management company or your agency isn't willing to do that, you're just not going to survive. And unfortunately, that was kind of where I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to move my business on my own for the most part, because a lot of times agencies aren't really because it takes a long time to develop a television show.
Oh God.
You don't develop it. And,
look at ours, 2 to 5 years on a reality TV show to get on.
Yeah,
right?
It takes a long time, and you have to be like a dog with a bone. You can't just say no, you have to keep going, and a lot of times these agencies just want you to make the money and bring the money in. And they don't really want the long lead, although the long lead is going to pay you better in the long run. So I realized, okay, I need to represent executive producers, maybe production companies. I need to create those relationships, so that when I develop these shows, I have somewhere I can sell. I can get them to option it, and then hopefully they can then get it on a platform, a distribution platform, which is a network or a digital platform. But it's a lot of work. And everybody kind of wants to say no until you can convince them to say yes, is really what it is.
Then don't you find like even when they do say yes, I mean, you could get down and they could just cancel you right away. I mean, I don't think that that's what a lot of the people that aren't in TV realize. You could go through years of trying to go through this to get on a network. You could be in one show, 2 episodes in, boom, you're canceled.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the honest truth is that that's why negotiating these contracts is so important. That's why you want to make sure that you're friends with business affairs at these different companies, as well as the development people, because you need to do certain things to protect your clients as much as you possibly can. Because I had a client a couple years ago he was a contractor, and he did an entire show, which was a platform that had not done this type of, a contractor's show before.
Like fixing houses contractor?
Yes, exactly. And they hadn't done this before, but these people send you a contract, and the contract will say something along the lines of, you'll get paid for whatever your client ends up being aired in. I'm like, well, no, you get paid for every time your client goes on camera. You know what I mean? Because that show never saw the light of day. He did 8 episodes of this show.
See?
That's a lot of time.
The network decided they don't even want to air it ever.
Yeah.
So I got him paid for the work. It just never saw.
But see, that's the funny joke that we have in Hollywood. We always say in LA, oh, everybody's got a show. Well, actually, there are a lot of people that have had shows, and they are working the show, but then it doesn't go to air at the last minute.
Yeah.
So,
well, and also like trying to figure out what the networks, what's going on behind network doors is absolutely insane. Because I had one client who I still work with. He's amazing. He's a chef, and we do a lot of great work together. He had a show on the Cooking Channel, and it was one of the highest rated shows for its time slot. It was killing it. I can't remember if we were going into season 3 or 4, but I was like on the phone, kind of being cocky, like, oh yeah, we got that. Like we're good. Like this, the ratings are fantastic. We're good. A couple days later, I get a call from the network. We're canceling the show.
I mean,
and I'm like, what do you mean you're canceling it? Like,
what was the reason?
Because the reruns do just as well as the new episodes, and so they're just going to rerun these things because sponsors don't care. Why put more money into something that they don't necessarily need to? Was their explanation? And I was like, I'll never figure you guys out. I will never.
And that's the thing we talk about all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't ever figure them out like right now. I mean, and like with that, like where is TV going? I mean,
that was my question. Like, you took the question. Yes.
Well, because that's what we talk about on our show. Because
Right.
we're trying to get away from all this negativity. We're trying to get away from all the catfights and all these different things.
Like, do viewers? I mean, I sense that there's a fatigue with those types of. But I mean, where is TV going from here?
The honest truth is that I don't know that that'll ever necessarily go away completely. I think that we'll probably hit a bubble at some point where people are like, okay, enough of like this type of, because it was unique years ago, and it was like, did you see that when Teresa flipped the table in Jersey?
Right.
Like,
Oh my goodness. It's the table flip that was heard all over the world.
Exactly. Teresa flips a table these days. No one isn't paying attention. You know what I mean?
They're pulling off wigs,
Yeah,
child.
exactly.
Eyelashes are popping off.
It's not even going to Andy's Clubhouse at this point. You know what I mean? Like, what happened? Oh yeah, that's
Exactly.
nothing. That's nothing these days. But we're going to get to a point where it's going to be a little bit too much. But a lot of whenever we say unscripted basically kind of means this for unscripted doesn't mean that there isn't necessarily a script. Unscripted means that they're not hiring union writers. There's not a union crew behind any of this. So what I see there being a great deal more of things that are considered somewhat unscripted, but they're being a little bit more true to a script, being a bit more, so you're not just following Teresa taking her kids to school anymore. You know what I mean? I think it's gonna have to be a little bit more dynamic. People are gonna get really bored with the same fights and the same arguments and the same scenarios, just with different names attached. So I really do think that there's going to be something that is going to just motivate. I think the industry is going to motivate things a little bit more to be a little bit more thoughtful and interesting at the end of the day. I think mindless television will always be there, but I don't think it's going to dominate like I think it does to a large extent right now.
So do you think that there will be a little bit more scripted shows that are going back on the air as opposed to like the other shows that we watch? And also, people that aren't familiar with reality TV, we could be having a scene, and then what they will do is they will cut out and edit it. The producers have a lovely way of doing that, and say, I just said something to you that I did not say right now, and cut those things in.
Well, that's what's happening now.
Right.
You know, I mean, and I'm not saying that things are going to go to a scripted. I think things are still going to be unscripted, and we have a large portion of our television is unscripted and will be still considered unscripted, but I have another show, it's a hurricane chasing show. So I meet the best hurricane chaser in the world and I'm like, let's do a show. The production company was brilliant because my pitch was, looking at what they've created is amazing. But you know, I was like, just go follow him chasing hurricanes. That's got to be interesting. And the
He's
producer,
about to get killed most of the time.
Right.
That's interesting.
And the producer was like, that's interesting, but I think what we need to do is we need to have 3 different crews going out there. So we follow him going to the eye, and we follow this very like heart-wrenching story about people who are being affected by the storm. And then we're folling the aftermath for the most part. And I was like, well, that's much better. And I've seen it. I've seen it, and it's amazing.
Right.
Okay.
And we premiered a couple weeks ago. I think we've done 3 episodes in the UK and Ireland, but it will come here to US distribution in just a little while. Can't really give out the dates, but coming out here soon. But at the end of the day, it's funny because I was part of that production whenever they did some stuff here in Los Angeles, and it's right because they're like, well, Tim, you represent Josh. I think you should be on camera. And it was funny because it was, for being unscripted, I did have to kind of like say the same thing just because the sound was off. You know what I mean? And I wasn't being told what to say, but it was one of those things where it wasn't just like Teresa taking her kids to school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's all very real. But sometimes you have to do things more than once to get it, so that it's watchable. You know?
What was your favorite show?
Oh, it's okay.
My favorite show that I worked on.
Worked on or represented, like what's
that you loved?
that you're really proud of?
You know, one of the very first jobs that I was able to work with was Attack of the Show on G4, and this is way back. This is back 2004. I had just basically started the department. Olivia Munn walked in my office and was like, I need representation. And I was like, oh, that's great because you're amazing, so smart, so fantastic, so funny.
She's the real deal.
Yeah, she's great. And so I didn't have, she gave me a chance and I appreciate it, you know what I mean? And I gave her a chance because I didn't know the people who were casting this job.
Right.
I didn't even know what G4 was. I don't think anyone did. Because it kind of was not much of anything at that time. And so I just kept harassing the casting people. I just kept calling them, going, you gotta meet my people, you gotta meet my people. And finally, I think they just got tired of me, you know?
Persistence.
Yeah, and they're like, fine, send in 3 girls. So Olivia's one of them and 2 others, and they call back and go, oh my God, we love her, she's fantastic. Let's do some testing and stuff like that. And I enjoyed the content. I thought it was kind of interesting. I thought it was fun, and I just love how hard I worked to make it a reality. And working with her was also amazing because she's so smart, and so she would come to me and say, hey, I think, this is what's kind of going on here. Maybe we should pivot and do this. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. I totally agree with you. She's very smart. So I enjoyed that. The content wasn't really there for me, but I just enjoyed how hard I worked, and I needed to watch it just so if there were issues or problems, I could then solve them.
It sounds like it was your first love.
It was kind of, you know what I mean? Because it was the first success that I started something, I got it going, and you know what I mean? And you feel good about those things because it wasn't handed to you by any means. It was definitely something that you worked really hard for, and so you appreciated it more, or at least that's how I felt.
I think the interesting thing is if you looked at yourself, actually think of, this would be a good way to kind of think about it. Think about yourself walking on that plane with Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Yourself back then, right? And that boy, or the young boy that was walking on the plane, what advice would you give him?
Oh.
Turn around.
Good job. That's how I feel about what I do in the industry.
I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah, go to New York system. Okay, exactly. Turn around.
That was really good. I was not expecting that.
Run! No, I would have been bored out of my mind had I not done that. You know what I mean? I really would have. I mean, I knew there was something bigger and better out there. So, but yeah, I mean, jokingly, run. fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy
It's
ride,
gonna be
is
a
what I
bumpy
would
ride.
have said.
And that's the truth. And, you know, I think you've taken me through this journey in entertainment as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was raising me like a babe in the woods. It was probably 2009.
It was,
Yeah,
yeah.
we started, and that's when I started doing the shows and trying to get into the industry and do things. You sent me to Marky Costello.
Yeah.
And that's what I appreciate about you, because that was like my aha moments of like getting in, like changing dynamics and like not putting all your eggs in one basket, and what does that look like? And Marky just pulls you out of that comfort zone.
Yep.
And it was crazy to do that. And you know, through the years, things didn't end up as I wanted them to.
Right.
on some of the shows. I wasn't able to do them for various reasons.
Yep.
And you know, now it's at that time to do that. But through the years, some things have happened to me in my life.
Yeah.
And I am a very private person because of the job that I had had before at such a high level.
Uh-huh.
And you were one of the only people in my world that I opened up to.
Yeah.
And that I could be raw with, and I could be vulnerable with,
Yep.
and that I could be honest with. And you were never going to judge me.
Absolutely.
And all you did was love me more.
Yeah, and that's the truth. And you have a very dynamic story, a very interesting one. And a lot of times we walk through this life, and you know, as hard as all of us work, I feel like all of us work hard, but sometimes someone like what you've been through to a large extent has to work 20 times harder. And for you to do it literally with a smile on your face, but not even just that. I don't know that I've met anyone as generous as you. Even going through the things that you've gone through, you're asking me what you can do to help me. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no. Like, I think one day you even said, sometimes I like getting my mind off my problem.
Right.
So tell me yours. You know what I mean?
That's what I said, yeah.
What can I do to help you? You know what I mean? And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. Well, I'll help. You know what I mean? Like, but that is the truth. I mean, you have been. You're a point of inspiration and strength. Yeah.
Well, thank you, and you have been for me as well. And it's just like I could not have gotten through so much of in my life, and just still kept going. And just the lovely words and the kind things that you say, that you did say to me at those hardest times. And I think that we all need that in our life. We've got to have friends that build us up.
Yeah.
And I went through some tough times, you know, not talking about the cancer, some other things that were going on that I don't like to talk about. And I couldn't talk to anybody. And I was so scared to like share that. And literally you were like one of like 3 people that I told that to. And I took a huge chance in business on that.
Yeah.
Because he could have cut me and been like, I don't even want anything to do with you ever again. And instead you didn't do that to me.
I found you more interesting. I mean, that's why I love what I do, to be
Right,
honest with you,
right.
because the more interesting someone's story is, the more I don't shy away from that. And everybody goes through things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's kind of how you kind of bounce on the other side of it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also surround yourself with people that you can talk to about those things, and they'll support you through it as opposed to judge you through it. And
Yeah.
again, I mean, it's so funny that, you know, you say I could have dropped you. I mean, none of that, I don't know that I put myself from anyone else. I don't think most people would have. I think they would have been there to support you. It wasn't like you robbed a bank, although I would have been totally cool with that too.
Yeah, no. No, people do drop, yeah,
Wow.
and they did. So yeah, people didn't know how to handle things and didn't
Yeah.
know how to do that, and so they did nothing.
Yeah.
And that was the
Okay.
worst thing to do.
I just had a aha moment just watching the two of you. I mean, so much of the show is about authenticity and really bringing to life stories that aren't told. And so much of Hollywood is about the glitz and glamour. But, you know, just seeing the bond between the two of you,
Thank you.
and just seeing how you can see that a relationship with manager and talent, and that is really what's real.
Yeah.
And
That's
I
what's real.
always promise you that no matter how big you get as talent, because that's also what happens too. That's the problem in this industry.
Yep.
You can have a talent that is a peon nobody like me, but then they go on and they really become somebody, and then they just turn. Did you pick up my dry cleaning? Did you get me in first class? Did you do this? So you got to see that kind of side of people too, right?
But you know what? It's interesting because as you see that coming, because I've done it for quite some time, when you see that coming, I've had talent who didn't work for months or whatever, and then all of a sudden they get a show, and now after doing several seasons, call you up and say, I'm tired, I just don't feel like doing this anymore. And I'm always like, be careful what you wish for. Yeah. And in one specific instance, this one talent, she did call up, and unfortunately, like literally, I didn't do anything. 3 weeks later, they canceled the show, and she hasn't worked since. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I said, be careful, because like what that could be. That could be detrimental. And the reason why she didn't work again isn't because she wasn't talented and great on camera. It's just that the pendulum swings, you know what I mean? And she needed to, go back to where she was, originally from for different reasons, after being out here for trying, and she had some success, and unfortunately she had to go. But when you see those people kind of like getting to that point, and you also have to grow with them. I mean, I've got some clients, like I said, their class of travel is super important to them, and depending upon where they are and what deal I'm doing for them, it makes sense. You know what I mean? I don't have a problem asking for business class travel for a client who's going from LA to New York, or vice versa. You know what I mean?
Not an option.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And you have to get on camera. You know what I mean? Like, why have exhausted talent all of a sudden there? Or if the talent's of a level as well, that being in coach, they could potentially be not harassed, but like to a certain extent, like bothered the whole time. Right. You know what I mean? Like, there's different reasons to put people in different, but you have to, I honestly look at, like, what is your motivation? Is a motivation just because you want to be a diva-esque? If that's it, we're not doing that. But if there are reasons behind it, and you know what? I've honestly, I understand the people's reasons. You know what I mean? Like, it's reasonable. Right. And I always, my clients always say, if I'm being unreasonable, let me know, and I will. Yeah. But it's not very often that I don't agree with them.
What would you give advice to somebody that's a new starlet or a new star that's trying to come out and trying to get in the industry, or even somebody that's trying to be an agent like yourself? Well, because if I could go back, if I could do anything, I mean, that would be a question I'll ask for you too. If I could go back and do anything, I would have been an agent. Yeah? Yeah. I would have been an entertainment agent.
You would have been great. You would have been great. You still can.
Could have been.
You still could. It's never too late. Never too late.
Yeah, never too late.
Okay, in terms of somebody who's coming out here to be on camera, I would probably say especially now, you have all the tools to go ahead and create your own brand. Find out what you're super passionate about. Like pinpoint what are those things that you're passionate about, and then you have the tools to go ahead and put yourself on camera and tell the world who you are, and just make sure that you're passionate about it. If you're not passionate about clothes, don't talk about clothes, because it's gonna come down flat. If you say, well, all these YouTube people are talking about apparel or talking about clothes, if that doesn't interest you, then don't do it. But everyone's interested in something, and the more passionate you are, the more it's gonna translate well on camera. So you can do that, and you can create, using social media and these other things, your own celebrity. Like, you could be your own PR person, you can be your own manager, your own agent, until you need to hire those people, So these days, when people come to me and they're like, I've got nothing, nothing, and I'm like, you're not doing what you need to do. And maybe they just don't have the knowledge to do it. So there's that. If you're coming in to be an agent or manager, again, find out what you're passionate about. I'm a great deal more passionate about people in the unscripted sense, in terms of like their stories and it excites me. I get to learn more about their lives, and I get to talk to different producers about creating something around that. Where actors and actresses are, like, I think they're incredibly talented. I love that. I think that's great. But I don't get to sit there and tell their story. Like, they're either gonna read well for a role or they're not going to. Where I can, as long as a person has the skill set to be on camera in terms of a host or an expert, I can convince them that this story is a really dynamic one that needs to be told. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's, I can't thank you enough to give inspiration, that you do daily for me. When I get down in the dumps, I at least have Tim that could go and do my fight for me, or give me those uplifting words. My God, we all need a friend or somebody that supports us in this world. And I don't know how many times I've been on the other end of that line. I'm crying, you guys. I'm just like, I can't believe you just said that. Because it comes from you. And I know that coming from somebody at such a high level as yourself, to give that kind of love and support to me from the bottom of my heart, that's what gets me up in the morning.
Well,
so I love you dearly.
You're welcome, and I love you dearly as well. Absolutely.
So I can't thank you enough for being a loving and supporting friend, and we all need somebody like that in our lives, and not just our friends, but somebody that is supporting us in business as well. So I love you with all my heart, honey.
You got it.
Thank you for doing this.
You got it. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for watching the AHA Show. And remember, when life throws you for a loop, you can always rebound and grow. You're more strong and capable than you realize. So it's time for you to say AHA and realize it too. Thank you so much for joining us.
That's amazing.
If you dig us,
If you're smelling what we're cooking, hit subscribe and like. Here, let's do that. You do it again, I'll do it.